How's it going, guys? So I should explain the lack of videos briefly. I've just been holed up for the last month putting in a large block of training, and I'm currently in Victoria in a bit of a hotel room situation. And so the production quality of this video is going to be a little bit lacking, but I wanted to turn the camera on since it's been a while, and I promised a couple more videos on form. So today we're going to be talking about sprinting form. First and foremost, I would like to say that I'm not a sprinter, nor will I really ever be. I am reasonably proficient in the sprinting form, and I've done a fair bit of work on my own sprinting form just to be able to function in a bike race. But winning sprint races, I probably won't be doing that. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, as always, and go search out other people that are much better at sprinting than me. But I am qualified to talk about the basics of sprinting. I haven't really seen too many videos out there that really talk about the very basics of sprinting form. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So to talk about sprinting form, we really need to break sprinting form down into its component parts and talk about the skills that are required for both of those. So the way I like to look at it, there's two main component parts, and each component has its own skill. First component is being comfortable being out of the saddle, being comfortable swaying your bike side to side, and getting the rhythm and timing of that down just at a very basic level. We need to be able to do that to be able to produce power. So basically, bike sway is the bike movement underneath you. And I see a lot of people that come off of trainers, they spend all winter on the trainer, and they really lose some ability, or they lose the flow of being able to sprint outside, and it's very different. So rather than your bike being in a fixed position, the bike is moving. You ideally are staying in a fixed position above your bike, and the bike is moving underneath you to take up any room. So ideally your head is staying level with this whole, through the whole sprint, level-ish. So that sort of gets into component two, but the first component is bike sway, and I'm going to have a video up on the screen, hopefully, of bike sway, and a lot of the skills that are required with that are quite simple to train. So simply going out in a parking lot and at slow speeds figuring out when you stand up, and figure out at what point your bike, how far over your bike can tip either side, and then slowly building up confidence pedaling and getting the timing down of swaying your bike over as you're pedaling. And I should have a video up on the screen showing that a little bit better. So that's first component. So component two is upper body and hand position. And it's sort of counterintuitive to think of that, but if you don't have a really good solid foundation to produce power from, you're not going to really be able to produce power. So when we're climbing or we're just riding on the flats, we're in the saddle, and so that is sort of our foundation setting of where we're producing power. Your arms do play a role in that, obviously steering the bike and stabilizing, but when you are out of the saddle, you're reducing the amount of contact points on the bike, obviously, and so the arms become the stabilizing factor in the equation. Very important to look at your hand position and subsequently your arm position from your hand position. Having the hands quite far up the drops, having the wrists and hands in line with the forearms, and then having the elbows bent down is going to bring your center of mass, center of gravity down towards the bike naturally without you having to bend over. It's going to allow you to pivot the bike underneath you much more effectively. So bringing your head down towards the stem, obviously keeping your head up. You never want to be looking down in a sprint, keeping your head up, but you're bringing your shoulders down towards the bike, and then the swaying happens underneath. It gives your arms a lot of room to move and torque underneath you. So the next component of that skill itself is your core, and having the core tight. And so that whole upper section of body, so hands, arms, shoulders, your trunk, your core, is going to allow your posterior chain to produce a lot of power quite efficiently. It's also going to allow you to be quite aerodynamic. So there's quite a fine balance between producing power and being aerodynamic, and it's great to be able to produce power, but it is almost worthless in a sprint if you cannot be aerodynamic. You're going to get beat by weaker riders who are much more aerodynamic. You're going to get beat by much more technically skilled riders who are able to, maybe they can only produce 70% of the power you can, but because they're so much lower down, they don't have to produce as much power. So being able to find that balance of producing power and being aero is incredibly important. And so being able to bring your body down towards the bike is going to really help with that. So that sort of leads us into the first phase. And so there's two components, like I said, of the skills that you need to really master before being able to produce power in a sprint in an effective form. And now there's two phases that I like to divide my sprint up into. Okay, so phase one of the sprint. In a race, this would be when you're reaching your sprint point that you've decided you're going to sprint from. So whether that's 200 meters, 150, 100 meters, 50 meters, right? In a race, hopefully you're able to recon the finish of the race. If it's a crit, you see it all the time. You've chosen your sprint point, and I'm going from here. So before you are getting to that point, or if you're doing an effort outside in training, before you start producing power in your sprint position, you want to be out of the saddle, have your hands in position, have your core engaged, shoulders, arms, everything is firm, engaged before you even start putting power down. So you can get out, say you're doing, say you're coming into the finish of a race and you're doing 400 watts in the draft. Well, you want to get out of the saddle and stay at 400 watts and start getting your sprint form down, click a gear, and then pop out into the wind and really produce power. What that does is a couple things. So first of all, you never want to sort of throw yourself out of the saddle into a sprint. It is not efficient in any way. You're not going to give your body time to really set up and be able to produce maximum power and maximum efficiency. And then second of all, it can sometimes throw your chain. And if you're not fully set up and the transition isn't smooth, right? It takes half a second for a smooth transition, half a second longer for a smooth transition, or a second longer. Take that time, take that breath, smooth transition, plan it out, and then start producing power. So that's phase one. So you get out of the saddle, get into your sprint position at low power, and then slowly wind the power up. And slowly, in this case, is the span of a second to whenever you decide to snap. So phase two is max power phase, and this is where you have your eyes on the line. You are doing max power, and hopefully your form is maintaining itself, and hopefully you've done enough training in this form to keep it maintained. So the keys with this are being able to keep your body stable, in a stable position, and then the power is really being produced from your posterior chain, really, your glutes, hamstrings. Definitely your quads are working quite hard here. You're cycling, but the main power is being produced from your posterior chain here, right? You're farther forward over the bottom bracket, and you're really pushing almost backwards on the pedals. You're nice and over the bars in a good position for your weight, so you're not too far over the bars. I know it's very easy to look at some of the best sprinters in the world, Cavendish, Ewan, and they're way, way far forward over the bars. And if that works for your body type, that's great. Those guys spend an incredible amount of time working on their sprint form, and they know exactly, they've done it so many times, they know exactly how it's going to go. So if you can get that form, great. If you can get near that form, but we're really looking for the most efficient form for you and your body type. So really, a tall guy is not going to be able to fold himself into that position and still produce power. So that's where the balance of power to aerodynamics really is key. So you see guys like Marcel Kittel, Groenewegen, and they're aero, but they're not as aero as Cav and Ewan. But then you look at the power difference, and Kittel doing 2,000 watts and Ewan's doing 15. And that's the power difference. That's the power to aero difference. So hands, arms, body position, nice and set up. Your body stays stable and your arms are basically pulling the bike into you. Your core is nice and engaged, and then your glutes are your bum's just in front of your seat, basically, allowing it room to pivot side to side. So your bike is swaying underneath you, and you're producing power from the glutes, and that's max power phase. And that is very, very important to train. So that transition into that phase, and then that phase is very important to train. Don't expect to just get in a race and be able to have stable sprinting form. You need to train that over and over and over again and really extend your ability to stay in that form and produce power in that form up to 20, 30 seconds. So really training it to the point where it is just muscle memory, so you can get out of the saddle, get set, and straight into that form. Thanks for watching. That's the basics of a decent sprint form, and I'm gonna hopefully have had videos up on the screen, so it's not just a video of my face and I'm rambling. I should have videos up on the screen of some decent sprint form. I think I've got a couple videos of some sprint efforts that I have done in the past. Again, I'm not a sprinter. Take what I have to say with a grain of salt. If you are a sprinter and you disagree with any and all of this, shoot me an email or a message and be like, yo, you got all this wrong, and then come on and let's make a video together and we'll talk about it. So thanks for watching, and train hard, train smart. Ciao.